Hello,
Yeah.
everybody. Welcome to another episode of Inspiring Educators, your podcast where we bring inspirational leaders to inspire future educators. Today, we have Mr. Sandeep Hooda with us. He is the founder of Vega Schools. If you've not searched about Vega Schools, I'll request you to go just Google them out and you'll realize what outstanding work the schools are doing in project based learning. But enough from me, we'll hear it more from Sandeep. So, Sandeep, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
I'm sure our listeners are going to learn a lot about your journey and how you conceptualized and thought about starting Vega Schools. But before we go there, why don't you tell us, how did you think about how did you reach to that idea of starting a different kind of school? And I know when you started it, project-based learning was still not known globally much, but you were kind of looking at it from a different perspective. So, what's your story? How did you reach that conclusion?
Thank you very much for asking me this question. This is something that's very close to my heart. There's a personal and a professional reason for starting Vega Schools. The personal reason is very simple. When I was in school, I'm a first generation entrepreneur. I started my business when I was in second year college. And I learned very quickly in my life that things that I needed to be successful in the real world, a lot of those things were not taught at school or not learned at school. And I also learned fairly quickly that things that I was innately interested in. I wish the school had done a much better job at connecting me with my strengths and talents and interests. And I, after having worked for about 20 years, having founded a couple of businesses that became reasonably successful, I decided to exit everything. I took a 2-year sabbatical, and during the sabbatical, I really connected with my strengths, things that I really innately wanted to do, and so it was kind of 360 degree for me. And the professional reason is that during those 2 years of traveling around the world, I made a list of 100 people I wanted to meet, 100 books I wanted to read, and the end of that journey, the professional end of that journey, an undefined, the beginning of which was undefined, was that I thought it's very, very important to reimagine education and to start schools that really enable learning by doing, that connect children with their strengths, and make learning really interesting and fun and relevant to the real world.
Wow. I've heard it and I've experienced it multiple times that traveling gives you the best education. So what I hear is your travel kind of rekindled that thought you always had of doing something. And, it also translated into you starting an educational institution, which is about experiencing things and how somebody could travel through their life, and while they're traveling through life with the school, growing there. So it's very, very interesting. So were there any particular incidents that happened in that travel, or any particular people that you met during that travel that kind of, ignited the faith or ignited the thought that, okay, I need to go and start a school?
Actually, 3 different things, and all unrelated but related. The first was that I met a gentleman by the name of David Price, who's a very well-known author. He's also on the board of our school, and he was on the board of something called the Innovation Unit of the government of UK, and their job was to go around the world and find the most innovative things happening in education. So I actually met him at a bar at King's Cross Station, and I was telling him that I'm on this sabbatical, and one of the reasons is that I really want to connect with my strengths, because perhaps I didn't do that while I was at school. And he said, and I said, I'm curious as to what should be the few things I should be looking at. And he said, the first thing you should do is, there are some schools around the world that have totally changed the game, where all the learning is by doing. Children love learning, and that's what you're going through is may not be something that children of these schools that they might not go through similar struggles. So I said, "Whoa, that's fantastic! Please tell me where they are." So he said, "There's one about a couple of 100 miles from here in Manchester." And I said, can you do something? Can I go there? So he said, "Yes, I know the principal. I call him, and you go." So a couple of days later, I was train bound, and I went to see the school called Matthew Moss School, and I was really stunned by how children love learning. They love learning so much that they had something called D6, which is day 6. So they would all of them would come to school on Saturday, and just by themselves. There were no teachers in school, and they would come to school on Saturday because they loved learning. So I said, "Whoa, that's
Wow.
seriously, that's amazing." So that was the second thing. And the third was that when I came back from the school, I again asked Dave that, "Look, I'm blown away by what I saw, but tell me, which is the mecca of, I mean, which is a school in the world that is the greatest in delivering this kind of teaching and learning?" So he said, "Oh, that's very simple. There's a chain of charter schools in San Diego by the name of High Tech High, and you must, go there. And the only problem is you have to wait 6 months because there are 3,500 people who visit from all over the world, visit these schools, policy makers, change makers, entrepreneurs wanting to start schools, principals wanting to learn, teachers wanting to sharpen their practice." And he said, "But you know what? The owner is a great friend. I'll call him and he'll see you." So he called the owner, Larry Rosenstock, who since then has become a very close friend. So a few weeks later, I flew to San Diego, and I was again absolutely blown away by what I saw there. This is a hardcore project-based learning school. All the children, there were no classrooms. Like at Vega Schools, we have no classrooms. We look like Google. You come in, you'll see different learning zones, children working small groups, large groups, cohorts, quiet corners, and this school was again, it was doing remarkable things. But what really blew me away was that not only was the school able to deliver amazing learning, real world learning that children loved, they were also able to attract people from all over the world who would come and see and get inspired. So therefore, they had become an agent of change. And that's what inspired me. The penny dropped for me. I said, "Wow, we must try to create an agent of change in India." And that's how Vega Schools were born.
Oh, beautiful. Have you read this book called Livingstone Seagull? What's his name? By Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingstone Seagull.
I have, yes. I have a long time ago. It's a lovely little book.
It's like you wanted to do something different and you reached the golden space where you saw these Santiago schools doing something.
I've read the book, and I think many years ago though, but I completely that's a great parallel you drew.
Right. So understood. So good. So the idea is, I think Santiago schools are now in their part 2 of life, where they're inspiring other seagulls to fly
Exactly.
and to inspire. Right. So beautiful. So
it's a great analogy.
Yeah. So would love to kind of maybe with you visit them and learn together. So maybe we'll plan.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Great. So you learned from these 3 incidents, and Sandeep, it's very rare that people are able to pick up the omens in their life. I don't know if you met David there by chance, or were you guys really meeting in that bar together and discussing something? But whatever happened, being that aware that this could be a life-changing moment for me, and taking that plunge of going ahead and really visiting that school in Manchester is not something that everybody would do. So there was an internal calling, and I must congratulate you here that you made the best out of that internal calling, and now you are one of the 15 most progressive schools. For the benefit of our listeners here, guys, it's very rare that a school which is so new yet so innovative, and it kind of comes in the top 10, top 15 category. And Vega Schools today stand in the top 15 most progressive schools, and they're a group of that alliance wherein they are creating that impact globally. So Sandeep, when you started, let's say you thought you met these schools, you met these people, and finally you thought that let me go ahead and start a school. How difficult or easy was that decision? Because you mentioned that you used to live in the UK, you were based out of London. and then coming back to India and starting a school in India. How difficult, easy was that decision, and what really pushed you to come back to India and start that school?
Actually, that time I was living in India, so
Okay.
it was therefore an easier decision. But starting a school for someone who who's never done it before it's not easy. It's you do all the things that you don't learn in Harvard Business School,
Absolutely.
especially starting the acquisition of land, the approvals. It's a huge challenge, but I think the bigger challenge for us was when I was sitting with our architect. This is an American architectural firm that has about 15 years of research in learning spaces.
Mhm.
And what's fascinating about learning spaces, research behind learning spaces is that they say that classrooms are detrimental to learning, physical classrooms. So when he asked me, he said, look, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being classrooms, traditional classrooms, 10 being no classrooms, where do you want to go? Do you have the guts to go all the way? And I said, yeah, we'll go to 10. We'll go, we listen to the voice of research. Of course, it was one of those moments, and I never realized until later that it was a pretty crazy decision because
I understand.
it's not easy to explain to a parent, especially a traditional parent, that look, there are no classrooms. So having said that, fortunately, that I think that risk paid off. It may not have paid off, but it paid off.
So tell me something, how easy or difficult was it to showcase the school to authorities and get approvals? Because many of the departments, they would come to the school and would say, where are your classrooms? And you're like, okay, there is no classroom. Was it easy, difficult? How did that flow?
Yes. So the other thing is that if were we an IB school or perhaps a Cambridge IGCSE school, it might have been easier. But we chose to be a CBSE school, and it was. And the reason we chose to be a CBSE school, again, it was everyone advised us we should not go for CBSE because experts felt that it did not dovetail with our progressive method of teaching and learning. But we chose CBSE for the simple reason that our goal was not just to create schools, it was to be agents of change. And if you want to do your best to change education, say in India or a part of India, then you have to adopt the mainstream curriculum and show it can be done better. Yeah. But that came with its own set of challenges, which we had to overcome. But we are lucky, we are lucky in the sense that there is now the NEP 2020, which wasn't there when we began. Right. And life has become so much easier for schools like us that believe in low pressure and more learning. And there's so much metacognitive research out there, brain research out there, that very clearly states that if you are under a state of pressure or stress, your learning levels will fall. And when you enjoy something, when you're doing something that aligns with your strengths and talents, then your attention levels will go up, your retention levels will go up, and in effect, you'll do even better in exams and tests. So it's become much easier now.
Wonderful. So that time, the authorities came and they were able to kind of understand what you were trying to tell them, or did you have to have separate presentation plans and everything to even explain things to them? How did it go?
Yeah, so we fortunately have learning zones. They are much larger learning zones. So in effect, it is a space which does learning. So it can be described as a large classroom, except that the large classroom can be configured, reconfigured. And similarly, we have all the labs, everything else that CBSE mandates. So and we have more. So we were able to meet the needs.
Super. So tell me something. What does the life of a teacher look like at a Vega school? So and I'm sure you would have to train them and take them to a next level of thought process. But just a regular journey, a teacher who decided, or you chose somebody that, okay, you are the right fit for us, and they started. How would their journey start with Vega School, and how would it keep developing over the months, over the years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's probably the most important question for me, because at the end of the day, I can sit on this chair and espouse all these beautiful things, but ultimately it's the teacher, we call our teachers learning leaders. It's the learning leaders and teachers who have to deliver high quality teaching and learning. So for us, interestingly, it's not about training, it's actually about untraining to begin with. So we when we hire people, our hiring process is probably as complex as of say a McKinsey or a Deloitte or a EY. We really try to understand the belief system of people we bring on board. And when I say belief system, I mean how open they are to learning, and how quickly can they unlearn and learn, how optimistic and positive they are they creative, do they work really well with each other, with other people, because PBL requires all these things. And when we bring these people on board, we have fortunately my co-founder, Dr. Stephen Edwards, he is one of the most highly regarded, well-known people in the world, who's an expert at PBL, and he's a trainer himself. So he crafts and executes and delivers a large part of the training himself. So we have a very robust training program. It's not just a front-ended one-up; it's a continuous training program, and we are always looking at we have rubrics, just the way we have rubrics for children, we have rubrics for our learning leaders, that the idea is to keep getting better and better and better. And we don't, day in a life of a teacher in a traditional school would be, here's a lesson plan, go deliver it. And here's a written curriculum, go deliver it. So we have guidelines, but we don't have written lesson plans that we give to a teacher, because the minute you do that, you take away the creativity, innovation, and the minute you do that, children have mirror neurons, so they will do what the adults around them are doing. So it's all deeply related. So a day in the life really is that the teacher, that they have to be very creative, very innovative, and if they are, they also really enjoy the process, because it's very entrepreneurial, it's very gratifying. You have a lot of freedom. Nobody likes to work with no freedom, at the end of the day. So if you're hardworking, if you believe in excellence, if you're a great learner, if you work well with others, you actually have a really good time.
Superb. No, wonderful.
As a teacher.
Wonderful. In fact, I've always had this analogy that I share with teachers, and our learners are teachers. So we are a teacher education organization. So we always tell the teachers that you can either be a consumer or you can be a producer. And the teachers who are producers will always be far more successful in terms of learning engagement and learning outcomes than being a consumer of whatever the school gives you, or whatever the principal gives you, or whatever the coordinator gives you. So don't be a consumer, be a producer. And I think you have created a system where consumers really can't survive, because you're not giving them much to consume. You're asking them to produce on an everyday basis, so they have to be producers. And that's outstanding. So Sandeep, which takes me to the next question. Let's say if I gave you a wish of defining a perfectly skilled teacher for your school. You could right now ask for anything, and you would get a teacher with all those skills that you ask for. What would be your wish list of skills for a teacher, that, okay, this teacher could actually be picked up, shown the pathway, shown what we are doing, and then they could be deployed within the next 1 week. So what would be that wish list for you?
So I would divide it in, so we actually do it the way the corporate sector does it, competency based, hiring and also evaluation and assessment. So you always start with the end in mind, with that, what would I evaluate in. So there are behavioral competencies and there are technical competencies. I won't go too much into the technical competencies because they are what any trained teacher, trained in the discipline, should have. I mean, if you're a math teacher, you should be really good at math. You should have done your BLEd, BEd, plus plus. And you should know the technical nuances of your subject, right, or subjects. So the technical piece is fairly standard and clear. It's the behavioral piece that's more interesting and challenging. So we have very simple things we look at. The first is we look at kindness, and that's empathy and kindness is a big value, is a big Vega value. And kindness has direct links to many other things. It has links to integrity, being an authentic person. So integrity is another value, being authentic. If you're kind, you'll be better at collaboration. I mean, it's an unkind or a mean or a rude person can't really collaborate well. So we look for people who are kind, who are empathetic, who, as a result of which, can collaborate really well. Right. People who are very high on integrity, hence they are authentic. What you see is what you get. What you say, you mean, and you mean what you say, kind of thing. And again, going back to the mirror neurons, children are watching, right? Your every move, everything you're doing as an educator. And then, the other quality is creativity, and generally an optimistic approach to life. So because we don't hand lesson plans, because the ink never dries on our curriculum at Vega Schools, the creativity is a very big piece. If you're not able to think in lateral terms, if you're not able to think in divergent terms. So there's convergent thinking and there's divergent thinking. Convergent thinking is when there's one answer, only one right answer. So our teachers and our learners live in the realm of divergent thinking, where there's more than one right answer. Right. So how do you craft questions around areas where there's more than one right answer? And that's real learning, when you have to play with the dilemmas and play with the contradictions that you will face and experience in the real world. So creativity is a big, and the basics that we always look at.
That's wonderful. And listening to what you're saying, I understand technical skills. They should be there. The regulatory requirements should be there. And then the regular, core competencies, subject matter knowledge should be there. And you've added that fourth dimension of having that behavioral side of kindness, empathy, being there, being present in the moment to learn themselves, right? And having integrity. So I know of schools globally who are even finding it hard to find teachers with the first three skill sets. There's a fourth skill set in your case. So how easy or difficult is it for Vega Schools today to find the right teachers? Are you able to find enough? Are you able to, do you struggle with that? And how do you, kind of work around that?
In this whole conversation, I think the biggest intangible is work culture. And when I started Vega, when I started my journey of starting Vega, I was pretty surprised that most schools I visited in India and elsewhere they had a very command control culture. There was so much fear in the system, and so little freedom. I remember school I went to. I loved my school for certain things, and certain things I wish were slightly better. But I know that everyone was scared of the principal, and most of us were scared of most of the teachers, or many of the teachers. So it was so. I found that in schools even today, the principal is scared of the founder. the teacher is scared of the principal, the children are scared of the teacher, and so on. uh, we've taken great pride to create a work culture where there's very little fear, where making mistakes is encouraged, where there's a lot of warmth. I know that every morning people come and hug each other, and these are big intangibles when it comes to attracting people. And also retaining people. I know that recently one of our core team members announced that they're leaving, and she's been with us for over 10 years, a very key member of the organization. So I spoke to her. Dan, who's our principal and director, he spoke to her and said, "Hey, don't go," etc., etc. But anyway, she decided. So 2 or 3 months later, she came back to us. She said, "I've interviewed at many places, and I just don't find these people nice and warm as we are. So I'm coming back." We had already done the farewell, so we were joking with her that now we need to have an unfarewell party. So that's a big one. Today we have a lot of teachers who come to us through referrals, that which is the biggest source, and 80% of I think our teachers today come through referrals, because progressive teachers like to be in such environments where they have freedom, where the culture is nice. So we find a lot of progressive teachers naturally gravitate to us. I think it was much harder when we began, but it's getting easier.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that's one of the most clear and well-structured strategies that I've heard about building and retaining your teaching workforce. And while it's very easier said than done, and you guys have done it, so my heartfelt congratulations to you, Sandeep, on this, because the more and more teachers we meet outside the realm of possibilities, the more and more we hear from them that we don't feel recognized, we don't feel trusted, we don't feel empowered. And if you've been able to build that culture, congratulations to you and the entire team at Vega that you've been able to do that. It's wonderful to hear about that. One thing that I always ask all the podcast guests and all the inspirational leaders to share is a message for the future generations, to invite them to become teachers, in your case, leaders of learning. I think right now we are in a position in the world where the gap between the number of skilled teachers required and the number of skilled teachers available is continuously increasing at a very fast pace. And to have outstanding schools like Vega Schools to run globally, we need outstanding teachers to run such schools. It would be great if you could send a message across, share a message for the future generations, pitching the profession of teaching to them, that why it is a profession of the future and why they should be considering it, as a choice, not by a chance profession. So if you could just share something.
Well, Aristotle called teaching the world's greatest profession. And most philosophers over the ages, starting with the Vedantic age and thereafter, have always referred to teaching as the world's noblest or greatest profession. So I think the first and foremost thing is that here's an invitation to you to do the greatest thing in the world that you possibly can do. So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is that it's also a great way to discover yourself and make yourself keep making yourself a better person on a continuous basis, because a great principal or a great teacher has to embody all the wonderful qualities that we want the next generation to embody. So and no one's perfect. All of us have flaws, some more, some less. So it's a great profession that, if you're deeply interested in what you do, is going to take you on a life journey of continuous improvement and evolution and introspection. And I think finally, the most important thing is that I know you might have billions of rupees or dollars and might not be very happy. And because at the end of the day, when you're going to reflect on your life, And there's a lot of interviews, research. There's so much out there that people say that, look, the most important thing in our lives when we look back is the difference we made to the lives of other people, and in meaningful ways. And I think there's nothing better than educate and than being an educator to be able to do that.
Superb. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful journey today, Sandeep. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure so many people would get inspiration out of this conversation in not just beginning their careers, but also initiating a new thought about how education can be changed. It's not just about that idea that somebody might just get, but also about a lot of planning, a lot of implementation that needs to be done around. And as you mentioned, face all the difficulties and then wait for the right time for the light to emerge at the end of the dark tunnel. Thank you so much for your time, Sandeep. I sign off for today's session, today's podcast, and looking forward to more discussions with more inspirational educators in the next podcast episodes. Thank you so much, Sandeep. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your insightful questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.